When the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, the decades-long Cold War came to an end. While President Ronald Reagan often receives credit for this, despite not even being president at the time, there was really one man who made the difference: Mikhail Gorbachev. Affectionately known as Gorby, he became the Secretary General of the USSR in 1985 following two short-lived leaders, and no one knew at the time how progressive he would be. Yes, that's right, a progressive Soviet dictator. While previous leaders like Nikita Khrushchev had promised greater freedom and happiness for the average citizen, Gorbachev actually made the change. He introduced the policies of perestroika and glasnost, or restructuring and transparency. Shortly after becoming the Secretary General at only 54, he met with the hardline Reagan, who had called the Soviet Union an evil empire. Like a house on fire, Reagan and Gorbachev got along, and the infamously stubborn British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said, "We can do business together." Everyone knew something big was happening. In 1987, Reagan and Gorbachev signed the International Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, eliminating all medium-range ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles, a milestone after decades of tension. It was Gorby's fresh viewpoint that allowed such détente, and the democratization of the Eastern Bloc. Since the end of World War II, the USSR had essentially occupied 7 Eastern European countries as a buffer between itself and the West. An Iron Curtain had descended on the continent. Leaders like Khrushchev had brutally suppressed all attempts at reform, and the people there wondered, would Gorbachev really follow through? Yes, he would. He said that while he did not necessarily agree with the reforms, he wouldn't stand in the way of the people. This was a massive shift in policy, and the Eastern Bloc broke away from a generation of Russian oppression. However, this was after a different major event. In 1961, a wall was constructed between East and West Berlin to keep East Berliners from migrating to the prosperous West. Families were torn apart as the initial barbed wire was installed overnight before becoming a proper wall. After Gorbachev became leader, Hungary loosened its borders with the West, lifting part of the Iron Curtain. But this was just a precursor to what happened next. On November 9, 1989, after over 38 years, it was announced that Berliners would be able to cross freely. While it was not meant to take effect until the next day, that night, tens of thousands of people converged on the crossing points of the wall. They finally opened, reuniting families and beginning the road to German unification. Parts of the wall were even knocked over. While not completely responsible, Gorbachev's lack of support for the hardline East German government contributed to the astronomically historic moment. In August 1991, Gorby was put under house arrest in a coup attempt by radical Soviets, but was saved by Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Following this, Yeltsin went behind his back to use his new reforms to split the USSR into its provinces, making him in charge. It's more complicated than that, but without Gorbachev's support of individual liberty, the Cold War may have lasted much longer and possibly even escalated into something much worse. Mikhail Gorbachev was something rare, a decent and caring man in a position of power. He lived until 2022, speaking out against Vladimir Putin and the militarization of politics. Most importantly, though, he featured in a Pizza Hut commercial in 1998. All hail to Gorbachev!